right. So our first special guest, Mr. Pinto.
Hello.
Wanted Stoicism as the subject, so...
Yeah. So I came across it and I felt like it does a lot for me with my life and the career I'm trying to pursue. So I kind of use the principles in it to help me in my career in MMA. So at the moment, I'm fighting at amateur level, and the principles I take from it is just accepting just accepting what I don't have, and sometimes like it really puts me off. Like for example, like Stoicism mentions a lot, like because I'm not happy with what I don't have, it's why people are sad, they're depressed, and they feel like what's the word? Without materialistic things.
Yeah.
I won't be like, I'm not going to ever have happiness, or without being rich, I'm not going to be happy. And without and then because I have to look forward to being rich or to being able to pay to go to training, because at amateur level now, it's hard, like with no sponsors. And especially because MMA, it doesn't have a governing body or anything. Like amateur level, it's just anyone I could just be like, you know what, I'll hire an ambulance, an event, and then anyone can fight, you know, and not a lot of people sponsor you. So then you got to pay for your own training.
Absolutely.
You got to work full time. So then with Stoicism, I'm just happy with it. Like I accept these things. A lot of the times though, like sometimes, of course, I'm just like, I'm going to training. I'm like, oh, like I got to pay for TFL. I'm tired. I just did a 12-hour shift and I got to go. And then I look forward to like, oh, okay, when I reach that level of having money, so I don't have to do that. But then you have to think, what if that doesn't happen? You know, there's always like, oh, what if I don't reach that point? I might have, you just stay miserable because it's always in the back of your mind. I just enjoy the process. I'm just like,
absolutely.
I got to work.
So are you looking forward to being rich and famous and having all the money? Or is that something you put aside?
Okay, I'll be honest. Of course I'm looking forward to it. I'm not going to lie about that. But through Stoicism now, I'm really accepting and I'm actually being a lot more grateful for the things I have now. So like I'm grateful now that because I just graduated, so I don't have to go. My option was to get a postgrad job, but because I want to do MMA and do it professionally, I'm not saying it's a risk, but I want to train twice a day, you know, so I can't do an ordinary.
It's a fairly brave decision.
Yeah.
It's not like everyone kind of does that. It's a fairly brave decision. So
exactly. So through that, I can't do a 9 to 5. I feel like it's like some people do, but I don't want to accept doing that. I want to train twice a day so then I could be training at the same level as professionals. But then the whole point of, like, some people say, oh, just do it and then work in the evening. Like my mom says, like, look, why don't you just work during the day and then train in the evening? I said, I don't want to accept that though. Do you know what I mean? I'm happy not making a lot of money, but just making enough to train.
I think that's almost part of the thing of Stoicism though, because you've got control over how much time you're spending at training.
Yeah.
A lot of people will sort of tack on training to their 9 till 5 life and then act as if, oh, but I haven't got enough time to do anymore. But the thing is, it doesn't matter if you have or haven't got the time.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, you won't be the champ. You won't be great.
You won't.
But you've got the control over how much time you spend on it. And you're not worrying about the stuff. Yeah, you're going out of your way to facilitate training really well, which I think is kind of a Stoic idea. You're taking control of that one aspect.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I'm not accepting, like, if I know like, for example, if I get a shift because I'm doing 0-hour contract work, and if I get a shift that will intervene with training, I'll turn it down. I don't care how much they're going to pay me. I'm controlling what I want now. Like, I can control when I go to train, who I train with. And then if I go to work and do like 12 hours, it's like my whole day is gone. So I'm stuck. And then, you know, I'm missing out on getting closer to my career. Because I always think there's people working twice as hard as I am.
Sure.
Working double, like they're training every single day.
So with accepting things as part of the sort of the philosophy of Stoicism, do you ever find yourself, when you're maybe injured or something, do you use that as well during those times? Because that's when I can imagine, being amateur can be tough, especially when you're injured, when you can't train.
It's, to be honest, it's scary. It's like, because to be injured and to potentially be injured, because if you get injured, it could be game over with any sport. But I'm saying especially like with MMA, how there's not a lot of funding. You know what I mean? Unless you got enough money to go to a private physiotherapist, or you always have to be careful at all times. So but I accept that though. I understand and I accept that these things can happen. And I don't let it scare me away. I'm like, if I can control the way I train and who I train with, and like try to reduce, because there's training hard and then there's training smart. If I'm just destroying my body, because even though I'm young now, I can still there's still a lot of wear and tear of this sport. So it's best to be.
Well, that's not just about like stoicism. That's kind of about goal setting. And that your target is not living a really easy life right now. Your target is to be great at this one thing. And not, it's about that. So you don't take the jobs that interfere with your training. No. And you don't train like an idiot because you're foreseeing a long way in the future. I don't know even know if that's a Stoic idea or if that's just...
what I'm saying is, if you're injured during the time that you're injured, then frustration comes in, and that's when anxiety also kicks in, because you're like, shit, I should be training right now. People are not training. So that's when Stoicism comes in and can help, I guess, with that anxiety, because you accept the fact, okay, I'm injured. There's nothing I can do about that. All that's in my control is to recover.
But that's at the same time, just because I'm injured and I can't like physically train, I can just because I'm physically injured and I'm at home, I'm just all depressed, doesn't mean I can't mentally train. I can't watch footage. So I can still control the time that I'm in. I'm still under control of what I'm doing. I can still watch footage, and I can rehab myself, like watch, I don't know, yoga videos and do stretches and stuff. Work with what I have and accept that I have a lot of things. But a lot of people, they just say, oh no, I need these top level physios I need to go to get operations and stuff. I just have to accept what you have and work with what you got. So that's what I control really, what I have.
Yeah, that's a really strong philosophy there, I think, especially because for a lot of amateur fighters, I think not having money is going to be a massive issue.
Yeah, 100%.
So like the way you're approaching it.
A lot of pros barely have any money.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of pros, pros don't have, unless you're a top level pro and your Instagram's crazy. It's like social media. You gotta be worth.
Yeah, Paige Van Zandt. Earns more money from Instagram than fighting.
Dancing with the Stars and all that.
Yeah, that's it.
But that's always the thing, though. People are always using MMA as like a platform to do other stuff rather than
absolutely
doing it yourself, because you can't control. That's part of the frustration about MMA is you can't necessarily control the next match you're going to get.
No, you can't.
Like look at Gaethje, for example. Gaethje, so overdue a title shot, should clearly be the next guy fighting Khabib, and yet it's probably going to be McGregor.
Yeah,
probably going to be a rematch after Ferguson, but Gaethje flat out earned it. There's no good reason not to give it to him. But
it's a business, though.
Yeah, but he can't control that.
He can't control. Of course,
what he can control is like being a human highlight reel, and then using it for other stuff. But and he does use it.
He can't control it, but potentially, like you see, like people like McGregor, he can control it. He can control who he fights. Do you know what I'm saying? So there's like,
you can, sure, but it's not about that necessarily. It's about sort of giving up when you can't control something. If it's out of your hands.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
You know, I'm sure he can fight for it, right?
Yeah.
He can say to Dana, give me this fight, I deserve this fight, and he can do all he can, but at the end of the day, if you don't get it, you just say...
He accepts that he doesn't have the power, but he's ready to fight anyone, because he knows he does or doesn't,
but it is what he needs to do.
We'll see.
I mean, do you know many fighters who use stoicism? You mentioned Jones, didn't you?
I think he uses it to an extent. However, he's an ego. I'm not gonna go. No, he's my boy.
I think there's a lot of fighters who probably use Christianity as a way to deal with a lot of hardship that you may find in fighting. So maybe for people that are not so religious, stoicism can be a good way.
I feel like Uriah Hall uses it quite well.
Is he not religious?
Not that I know of.
I have no idea. The American fighters, I always assume they were just hardcore Christians. To be honest.
I haven't seen him at mass, so I haven't. But like he was mentioning like.
Are you Christian yourself?
When I from
Cool
like
podcast.
as I was.
No, it's okay. I'm just curious whether like, because then it shows that you don't necessarily have to. You can be Christian and use Stoicism as well.
I was Catholic. I was baptized, had my Holy Communion. But obviously, as I got older, I had my own opinions develop.
Sure, yeah.
The way how I do with religion is different to how like
absolutely.
Yeah,
we're not going to turn this into a religious.
So, but I was saying, I feel like one fighter that uses it is Uriah Hall because he accepts that he's not the champion, but just because he's not the champion doesn't mean he can't be a good fighter. Yeah. People say, if you're not holding, of course you want to be a champ, to be the best in the world, your class is best in the world, but he's like, just because you're not the champ doesn't mean you're not the best fighter. And he was saying, he had a fight and he beat a black belt in Ju-Jitsu, I think, or when he was doing kickboxing, it was a black belt in kickboxing, and then his coach, he beat the guy, and he was like to his coach, how come I beat him? But he's a black belt. And his coach was like, it has nothing to do with the belt. Yeah. It's what you control, what you can do. And like the belt is just, it's another material thing. It's
absolutely.
Like me, if I'm stuck, like I'm at blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu, and if I'm stuck there, that's fine. The belt doesn't determine how good I am though. It's just on paper or statistic.
Absolutely. This raises an interesting topic within Stoicism actually. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the word euthymia or euthymia, something like that. So it's a concept that Seneca came up with or wrote it. And it's the fact that you it's staying on the path. So believing that you're on the right path and not straying. Yeah. Because in life, especially maybe in MMA sports, or when you got a lot of people that you can kind of follow, or you have a lot of friends around you, you can kind of feel like you want to go certain ways, right? And you that makes you stray away from the path. But if you believe that you're on the right path and you stay on that path, that will lead you to the place you want to be. Course, so that kind of actually,
it's like law of attraction.
Exactly, yeah. That makes me think of belts in Jiu-Jitsu. It's like, I know I'll get there. Yeah. I'll get to the black belt or whatever. I'm just going to stay the course. Just believe that what I'm doing, turning up every day, is going to get me there. And Seneca was one of the proponents of that sort of ideology, I think, of believing in your own set path.
But that's like Jones, he was... recently he got his purple belt, but he was like a blue belt for a very long time. Well, he wasn't even a blue belt for a long time. He was still a white belt, but he's fought in the UFC and has beaten like at least 7 black belts in Jiu-Jitsu. But what people were, a lot of people were surprised that he was beating them. He's like, but you're only a white belt, but it's got nothing to do with the belt. Just because you haven't seen him be graded.
Don't you think, because that sounds, actually I take it back about you committing to the fighting part. Right. That's almost a really stoic idea in that respect. Don't you think that's almost a dangerous idea, though, in the fact that, obviously, everyone who's great didn't stray from the path. Yeah. How many people didn't stray from the path and never got there? It's faith in the way that you're just like, I'm going to get there. Yeah. And the working smart, don't get me wrong, that's the right way to go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But that idea sounds kind of dangerous, whatever the word was, in the way that you just end up going down this road.
Right.
And if you're not, you don't know what's at the end of it. You might have faith that you're going to get there at the end, but you don't know what's at the end.
But you accept that, though. You accept that you could potentially not get there.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you. I think there's definitely a caveat, as it is with any philosophical ideas. Yes, if you're on the wrong path and you believe just staying on it is good, you might end up in the wrong place. That's absolutely something that can happen. But I think what he's trying to say is that what the ideology is trying to say is that there's a lot of distraction that you sometimes can get worried that you're not doing things well enough, because there's a lot of social pressure. There's a lot of, you watch Instagram, you watch fighters do things, and you can almost like rid yourself of confidence. So I think that idea can kind of help you in those times of anxiety where you feel like, shit, am I doing the right things here? Should I still be pursuing this? It's like, okay, no, I'm on the right path. I'll keep on it. It's like a yin yang. It's obviously you want to be on the right path as well as just staying on the path, because just being on some path doesn't, necessarily get you to the right place.
I guess it keeps you going back to training when it's going bad, because you're like, I'm on the right path. If I keep going, it will help me eventually, and it will make me better. It's a motivational factor.
Yeah, I mean, I can give an example of like what I do is like, I work as an engineer, and sometimes I feel like, am I in the right industry? Should I be here? Like, there's a lot of exciting stuff going around, like, I don't know, AI or blockchain or some shit like that. And I'm like, am I in the right place? This is kind of stagnant. And then I kind of go back and I'm like, do you know what? No, if I stay on this path where I am now, I know that in a few years, I will be in a much better place than I am now. And those efforts will have paid off, sort of thing. So maybe that's where it can kind of come in.
No, that's fair.
Yeah. What was another thing that I wanted to mention? It was like Marcus Aurelius talks a lot about basically assessing yourself as a person on a daily basis. Is that something that you incorporate? Like, would you, every day do like a rundown, like, how am I doing? Like, what?
Well, like, I mostly do it just in terms of, like, I try to not, because I feel like a lot of people, like, especially working as well, like, they wake up miserable. Like, you just wake up miserable. You just, I have to go to work. I got to do long hours. And I feel like that already is like a setback. Like, you're just like, do you know what I mean? You're defeating yourself already. So I just assess myself if I'm happy, if I'm prepared what I'm gonna do today, like understanding where I stand and accepting where I stand, and still being in control of myself. It's like I try to master myself, and prepare myself to be better every single day.
Well, I don't know about the getting better part, but I think an interesting thing in Stoicism is where you look at what it could be like.
Yeah.
What's it like, the fleeting thoughts of like how bad it could be?
Yeah, like sort of priming in a way, like
because
from looking at the negative outcomes and facing them, like mentally, sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's two parts. It's partly like, I could be on the street. I could never see my friends again.
Yeah, that's what I say. That's what I read. I didn't read. I watched something about Seneca talking about that.
Yeah.
Like, I think about the worst case scenario, if that makes sense. I think when I wake up, I think about, okay, I put in my head, I don't try to say, I don't say I have to be better, but I'm working towards it, but I still think things could be worse. Well, I may not even be able to, sorry, go on.
It's kind of a way to be thankful for stuff that you've got at the moment. I might not have this job.
Yeah.
I could not be in London. I could not be training with you. I could be stuck at home, not be able to do this. I could be injured. I could be in a much worse place. Yeah. And it was about being thankful for that. But then it's also the future idea that I could end up down here. Mm-hmm. So this is what I need to do. Or I could end up in this terrible situation, and this is how I would get out of it. Well, that's an old idea that's happened in other parts of the world as well. I mean, I think in Stoicism the idea is to have sort of a really quick thought about it and just bear it in mind.
Yeah, it's like so Tim Ferriss actually talks about this as well. He calls it fear setting, and it is in like an ancient Stoic idea as well, and it's used in cognitive behavioral therapy, used for like anxiety and depression, CBT. Because funnily enough, Stoicism is a big part of that CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and it talks about you actually like going down and thinking about certain negative outcomes that may arise in the future, and you go through that and you really like pinpoint, okay, what could happen, see that, because a lot of times our mind plays tricks on us, so you think things are worse than they actually are, but if you write them down or even dissect them, they become clearer, and you can even sort of plan ahead for them.
I feel like though with like with Stoicism, that's like CBT you're talking about, and then I feel like it's more acceptance, commitment therapy. So that's more like CBT is. You're still. I feel like they're still ignoring the thoughts that they're having and replacing them. But with like, because like when I was at uni, that's what they taught us in sports psychology. CBT is just blocking out, and then ACT is it's actually accepting the thoughts, and then being at peace with it.
Absolutely, because those thoughts are absolutely natural.
Because I feel like if you block them out, they will eventually come back.
Yes.
So the best thing is just to accept it, like you said, like being grateful and just understanding where you are.
I think it's been helping me, for example, like being like I'm competing next Sunday, and there is some obvious anxiety because it's a competition, and it's been kind of like helping me the acceptance idea of Stoicism, just being like, yeah, that's fine. This fear is
that's exactly how I feel. That's how I feel. Yeah,
it can be a good thing. You know, it can be a good thing. It can fuel you to.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
and I think like you've said this. It's like when, especially if you're maybe fighting, you're like, what are the things that I can control? It's like, okay, I'm gonna train the things that I need to train, and that's in my control. Everything else, I don't have any control over, so there's no point being worried about them.
So that's exactly. That's what I meant. That's when you mentioned about the Jones. That's one thing he tries to control, like the fear of competition coming up. So like regardless, you're gonna feel nervous. Like one thing I always try to practice is you can't shut down the nerves completely. You can't. I don't think unless you're robotic, you can't just not be nervous. You're gonna feel something. It's like even Cowboy says he's always nervous before a fight. But
Darren Till as well. He mentioned it.
I think the most important thing, if you accept those nerves, like you don't ignore them. You're like, oh, like some people say, oh, I use the nervousness and try to turn it into fire. But like they say Mike Tyson used it a lot, but I feel like it only does you so much because I feel like you're narrow-minded. But if you just like Jones says, he accepts the nerves, he accepts where he is. He's like he accepts the fear. And then he just becomes one with it. Like you just accept that you understand. All right, the fear is there. I understand where I'm stepping into, but I know I can only control myself. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and it's a bit of it's not Stoicism per se, and it's a little bit of a tangent, but I guess it's along the same lines. I don't even know the idea of this philosophical practice. It's apparently like a thing like a samurai did. Before battle, they would think of like the terrible situations they would get into and just think about them and come to terms with them. And it's that whole visualization thing again, because you can visualize yourself being victorious, you can visualize yourself going into the ring and destroying, but it's what happens as soon as something goes wrong.
That's
the image is shattered. So the whole Japanese idea was to go in, you imagine yourself in this terrible situation, and it has two effects. Firstly, you've lived through it already, so you're less nervous when it happens.
Absolutely.
And secondly, you think of how do you escape? How do you get through it? Which was a way they used to prepare for the fights they were going to have.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
and it links very strongly to what Stoics would also talk about. I mean, it's interesting because these ideas do occur in other cultures as well.
Because they say always think of the worst case scenario. Because it's like visual. That's true. I think a bad thing about, Because I know a lot of fighters use visualization, but I feel like they don't think about the work. They just think about what they can do and not what their opponent can do back to them. And then exactly when you go in there, you're just like, oh crap, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And then it just shuts down your flow just goes.
It's a different sort
your
of...
arousal's different. So,
but it's interesting because people like Conor McGregor, I mean, you know, I guess you can take it with a pinch of salt because you don't know if he's just playing hard.
Playing the role, yeah.
But he kind of says like, you know, I'm only worried about myself.
Yeah.
I don't worry about the person in front of me. Try find, I don't know, is that the right approach?
I mean, to an extent, like you should prepare for a specific person, but I can't do anything about how well prepared they're going to be.
Yeah, I feel like even Conor McGregor game plans. Yeah. Like he says he doesn't.
No, he does. He
but
has to.
Come on, John definitely goes in game plans.
I mean, there must always be a contingency plan. Like you still have to drill, and like one thing I like is like Floyd Mayweather, because he's like, I know every fighter is great, they're powerful, fast, but he's like, I train to make adjustments. He doesn't train just to be a knockout. He's like, I think adjustments is the most important thing in fighting. If you can adjust, then it shows like you're prepared for the worst.
And I guess that mental preparation beforehand can help with that.
Well, I always think it's like a missing part of preparing for a fight because a lot of people, you're right, they do talk about positive visualization. Yeah. Like, I'm going to knock him out of this, I'm going to take him down with that. And you like crushing your opponent. But every day in practice, we drill escapes and we drill getting up. Do you visualize that? Do people visualize?
I've started to be honest. I've actually started like I visualize getting rocked, like
yeah.
A lot. I feel like a lot of people don't. They don't visualize being rocked, and actually like you're like I think it's like when things don't go in your way. Sometimes like when I'm fighting, if I get hit, I've been hit and I can hear the crowd just going, ooh, like I hear people on mine they're like, ooh, but to me, I'm just like, it's not a big deal. It's gonna happen. Yeah. I know this is a fight, you know?
And you've been through it beforehand.
I don't say I'm Superman. I know I'm gonna get hit. But like some of my friends are like, oh man, you got hit, or how come you let him grab you? I said, it's combat. You know, I'm not super. Like, I've accepted that it's gonna happen, and
that's really powerful.
I've already visualized like I've visualized being thrown suplex, but I'm just like, what will I do after that? And it's not even the technique I'll use. It's just I'll be fine. It's like when you're in that position, you're just accepting the moment. You're like, I've done this. I've drilled this so many times, and I know what to do.
Yes.
So it's just.
I think fighters, some fighters like because they visualized. So much of the positive outcomes when it comes down to when they lose, and you see a lot of them really it's a big hit for them.
Ronda Rousey.
yeah.
I feel like she felt indestructible.
And, you know, maybe ideas like those ancient Stoic ideas of visualizing those negative, the worst outcomes, would have helped her to deal with that whole situation much better.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think that...
I feel like the only argument is, though, when you're doing that, you're just like... You're more accepting defeat. So, like, when you visualize these worst-case scenarios, when you're actually in them, you're like, oh, okay, it's all right
to lose. There's a dichotomy.
Yeah, you're like, it's all right to lose. I've seen this happen, so I'm going to just accept it. So
I think there's, like, one last little bit I'd want to touch on. Like, in relation to that, part of Stoicism is kind of accepting part of the really old idea was that things are in the best way they can be, and there's a reason for everything happening. Yeah. And it's kind of like that the whole being on the path thing again. You're ending up where you're meant to be. It's kind of like there's a reason for everything sort of attitude, which is, again, a way of dealing with a loss, and it's clearly not something that a lot of fighters who have, like... Yeah. I think it's the difference between Ronda Rousey and Conor McGregor. Yeah. They're both amazing. They both visualize the positives. They both crush. Conor McGregor, when he loses, he accepts it and sort of moves on. Yeah. I don't know if he uses this idea, but it's kind of things are the way they're meant to be, and there's a reason this is happening. And I'm on the path, and I'm going the right way. Ronda Rousey, as soon as it happened badly...
couldn't accept it.
It went wrong, and it crushed her. Yeah. And it's kind of the non-religious way of having faith in your life and seeing that things are the way they're meant to be and just trusting the process and how it's going to move you forwards. And I feel like that is a really important part of Stoicism that maybe a lot of fighters are missing out.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to the podcast and checking us out on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram under the name Combat Thoughts. We'll see you next time.